Hi guys, Laura here. I'm here today to do my top 5 Wednesday, and the theme this week is series that got better. If you guys have watched a couple of my wrap ups, you know that normally when I read first books in a series, I always say that there's room to improve, and I always give first books in a series a lot of slack. But these are series that just accidentally, like, not only did the books get better because of the series, but I just enjoyed the books better. The first series I'm going to talk about, I chatted a little bit about this in Couples That I Love to Hate, but it is the City of Bones series by Cassandra Clare. I definitely did chat about this in that video, but I'll recap my thoughts here. I really had a very big problem with the first two books in the series because it was such an intense love triangle between Simon, Jason, Clary, and I always tend to root for the underdogs in these relationships, and I just did not like it. And I just was really having a hard time liking either Clary or Jace at that moment, and I did not want them together. And it was just a lot of like romantic drama. But after book two, the series just really took off for me. I think it had a lot to do with the Simon plotline and what was going on and the new characters that we were introduced to. There was a lot of romance drama, but it had nothing to do with love triangles. It was more like internal struggles, which I thought was so interesting. And the end part of this series is just so fascinating. So that is probably why I prefer the later books to the series. I'm about to start Heavenly Fire, which I haven't read since I read it for the first time. So I will keep you guys updated on my thoughts. But I definitely enjoyed the later books in the series to it. The romance just became like a base plot line. Like it was fascinating, but it wasn't a focus. And sometimes I have a really, really big issue with love triangles. So that was probably why I prefer the later book, just because a romance triangle is not really the focus. There are other characters that have love entanglements, but I like that it was not Jason Clary because I feel like I wanted Simon to get a happy ending, and he's on the right track right now. So the next series I'm going to talk about, I would say is a little bit controversial. Some people don't like the series, but I grew to love it, and that is the Maze Runner series by James Dash. I do love a good dystopian, and I really did enjoy the first book in the series, but I felt like this book really got its stride starting like in like the second book because it really changed the game. And I think James Dashner does that really, really well. He really changes the games in his books, and he starts using worlds that you don't expect you're going to be in and kind of change the environment, and the characters got really good. The character development in the series really was so fascinating, and I think that you get that a lot in book two and especially in book three. I still need to read the Fever Code, but overall, I really impressed me the complexities that the books went through, and I highly recommend if you've only read book one or if you haven't read the books and only read the movies. The movies are great. The movies are like an adaptation, definitely. It's definitely not word for word, which I don't think any adaptation should be. That's like a question for a later time. But I really did enjoy the books, but the movies as well. But I think that the books have just a very interesting story. And I would encourage you to complete the series because I think sometimes some people find the first one very, very like common and very, very dystopian, basic. But I really enjoyed the last couple books in the series because it dealt with a lot of interesting issues with the characters and the characterizations and what their reactions were, and I really, really enjoyed it. So if you have not finished the Maze Runner series, I highly recommend. And also, Maze Runner: The Death Cure is coming out in September with Dylan O'Brien, who is probably one of my favorite actors to date, and I'm very, very excited to be seeing him in the movies now. Since Teen Wolf is ending, I will need some Dylan O'Brien fix in September. I think it comes out in September. The next series I'm going to talk about, I think my friend Justin is going to murder me when I say this, but that would be the Bloodlines series by Rochelle Mead. Now, I had read this after I had completed the Vampire Academy series, and the Vampire Academy series started off very intense with like everything. So I was expecting the intensity of the Vampire Academy series starting, and that just was not what it was. The first 2.5 books I thought were very, very slow moving, and I think that's because of the lead character that we had because of Sydney. And at the I think that it was a very, very slow start and there was a lot of world building, which kind of surprised me because we had been in this world so long, but we still needed world building. And I think that the mystery was just a slow burn. So it was definitely like a slower book and a slower thing, but the ones it picked up, which is like around Indigo Spell, I really loved it and I had to read them back to back. And it became like a really interesting series. And I grew to love Sydney and I grew to love Adrian. And I love the setting that we were in. I thought that was super cool. It was definitely a very different series than Vampire Academy, and I really like appreciated that. I just wanted a little bit more action and adventure in the start of the series. But I highly recommend, like, if you're in the middle of it and you're just not loving it, I definitely recommend you get to at least the end of Indigo Spell and then see what goes on, because I think that, I can't remember, Silver Shadows was really, really good as well. So those books, I think, definitely, but the series definitely got better for me. So I'd highly recommend, if you're like contemplating, you just sit down and read it, because it was actually a really, really good conclusion. The next series I'm going to talk about is an adult series. I talked about this a couple of times, but it is the Hannah Swanson series by Joanne Folk. I've talked about this definitely in my wrap-ups when I started doing them. But the Hannah Swanson series is an adult series, and it's one of the cozy mysteries, and it's all about this baker named Hannah who works in a bake shop, but she winds up unexpectedly entangled in all of these mysteries that somehow are based all around her baked goods, which is kind of like a very, very contrived premise. But it's just, like, I call these books like a good pair of jeans. Like, they're just fun to read. I love the world building, the characters, the mysteries, especially in like the first 5 books in the series, are so weak, and I just could predict who was the killer before I was told. It just was not very well planned. But I will admit, towards the end of this book series and the books that I'm reading now, the mysteries are not only like intriguing, but I cannot predict them. And I think that that's just shows her strength as a writer, because she did get better. There were some books where I literally was like, I know who the killer is, and I was totally right. And sometimes I feel that way and then I'm not right, and I almost prefer that. But all of these books, I predicted the killer, and I was just like, can't you just write a stronger mystery? But then again, I'm a person who really loves mysteries, and I read a lot of very well done mysteries, so maybe cozy mysteries aren't the genre for me, but I just was really, really enjoyed them. So I will admit, this series is like an investment, but it is worth the payoff if you like characters, because the characters you really do love to grow to love, and the world is just really, really fun to be in. So if you're looking for a young adult series that has unique mysteries towards the end, I highly recommend you check out the Hannah Swanson series. The last series I'm going to talk about is the These Broken Stars series by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spence. This series took me a while to read, simply because I was really having a struggle with the first book, and this book is basically a sci-fi space opera, and it's very focused on the science in the first book, and I think that that's what like threw me off a bit, because science is not my favorite genre, and science fiction I really sometimes struggle with. So the first book was rough just because I needed to really pay attention to the book and not just like let my mind wander like I sometimes do. Um, but overall, as the book progressed, I think that having a foundation of the first book made the other books so much easier to understand, just because I had just developed knowledge about the world. And I absolutely loved the interconnections between the characters in the 3 novels. I thought that that was so well done. And I like that Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner wrote the different characters. I thought that was amazing. And I think that they're great as like a writing duo. But I simply was like a little bit thrown off by the first book because I wasn't expecting such a sci-fi heavy novel. It was obviously told me it was sci-fi, but it just was very intense on the science fiction. I was like, I don't know if I can continue this series. Finally did, and it took a really, really big break between book 1 and book 2. But overall, I really did enjoy the series, and I thought that it was really, really well done. It had some really interesting moral issues that came up, especially towards the end. But I simply love the interconnections between all the characters and how they were related. And I highly recommend, if you have not checked out the series, that you do, because it's a really, really fun read. And all the leads you will fall in love with. So those are all the books that I thought that the series got better as the series went on. Comment below, let me know what some of the series that you think that got better, and maybe I'll check them out. Alright, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!